was recently reading The Art of Spending Money by Morgan Housel, which is a phenomenal book. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. You might recognize his name because he also wrote The Psychology of Money, another amazing book. There's one section where he summarizes something so simple yet so profound. Most Americans think they have a spending problem because they order too much from Amazon, or they eat out too much, or they have too many subscriptions. But the truth? For the vast majority of Americans, their financial life comes down to 5 decisions. Just 5. And the reality is, they're usually not the ones we obsess over. Housel puts it this way: the amount of attention a problem gets is often the inverse of its importance. Meaning we'll spend 30 minutes debating a $150 purchase, but only a few moments deciding what type of house we can afford. Or worse, we don't even make that decision ourselves. We let a third party, like a bank, tell us what they think we can afford. And when you say it out loud, it sounds crazy. But for most of us, that's exactly how we behave. Hey guys, what's up? I'm Erin and welcome back to the channel. So today I want to walk you through the only 5 expenses that really matter, the ones that truly determine your wealth, your stress level, and your ability to retire. And then we'll talk about why everything else is basically a rounding error. Here's something strange about how our brains work. Small purchases feel painful. Big purchases feel abstract. A $30 lunch, you debate whether or not you should go. $500,000 home, you glance at the monthly payment, say you need a place to live, and you sign for it. $10 monthly subscription, should I keep it? Should I cancel it? $55,000 car, well, it's only $700 a month and you need a car to drive, so you sign. It often feels like we're being responsible when we debate those little decisions, but the giant decisions, the ones that ultimately determine 80 to 90% of our financial lives, those often happen with shockingly little thought. That's why Housel says we give the most attention to the least important things and the least attention to the most important things. So let's try to fix that. The 5 expenses that actually matter. Let's start with the big one, your home. Your home is your biggest monthly expense. It's your largest lifetime purchase and really the purchase that sets the baseline for your entire financial life. Many people don't realize just how big this decision really is. So let's put some numbers to it. A $600,000 home at today's rates doesn't cost $600,000. By the time you finish the mortgage, it costs closer to $1.34 million. To put that into perspective, that one decision is the equivalent of 243,000 Starbucks lattes, 45,000 DoorDash orders, and more than 7,000 years of Netflix, all from one single choice. Now let me take it a step further. A $600,000 mortgage on a 30-year fixed at roughly 6.3% comes to a monthly payment of about $3,714. But if instead you bought a more modest home with a mortgage of $450,000, the exact same loan terms, your monthly payment would drop to about $2,785 a month. That's a difference of nearly $1,000 a month. And here's why that matters. $1,000 a month is $12,000 a year of pure breathing room. This could allow you to accelerate your savings. Maybe you fully fund that Roth IRA, or you increase your contributions to your 401k. You're able to reach financial freedom sooner. You reduce your financial stress. You beef up your emergency savings. Or maybe you take a portion of this, you take an extra vacation. You allow yourself to get that latte, or you allow yourself to keep the subscription you truly love. That same $1,000 a month can help you reach financial freedom years earlier. When your mortgage is lower, everything else in your life is easier because this is the biggest line item in your budget. Choosing the $450,000 mortgage instead of the $600,000 mortgage saves you about $184,000 in interest alone and cuts more than $330,000 off the total cost of the loan. That's one decision. It's $1,000 a month, $12,000 a year, and hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of a lifetime. That's hundreds of thousands of different decisions you could have otherwise made with this money, whether it's spending it in other ways or investing it to accelerate your wealth generation. This is why the big decisions matter so much more than the little ones. Why continually agonize over a daily latte when changing your housing can transform your entire financial life? The home you choose is truly the most important financial purchase you'll ever make. Number 2, your car, or usually your cars. Cars are sneaky. They feel reasonable because they're usually packaged in the form of a monthly payment rather than full sticker price. They're also essential because how do we get to and from work without a vehicle? But a $700 monthly payment is one of the biggest quiet wealth killers that Americans experience. If instead of making that car payment, you invested $700 a month for 35 years at a reasonable 7% rate of return, you'd end up with about $1.24 million. Over that time, you would have contributed about $294,000, and almost $950,000 is pure growth. That's nearly $1 million in compound interest from one decision. And most families don't drive one $700 car, they drive two. So that ends up being nearly a $2.5 million decision over the course of a lifetime. But here's the irony. So many people will spend more time debating whether or not they should go out for dinner and spend $50 versus whether or not they should buy a $40,000 vehicle. Now, of course, it's not about never buying a vehicle or never buying a new car. For many of us, cars are an essential part of our lives. However, there are some small tweaks or small practical decisions that you can make when it comes to vehicles that can make an enormous difference. For example, what if you took a payment that only lasted for 3 years and then you continued driving that vehicle for another 5, 6, or 7 years with no monthly payment attached to it? How much more freedom would that give you compared to the typical cycle of always having a payment or always upgrading or even upgrading before the loan on the previous one is paid off? That simple choice to have a payment sometimes rather than having a payment forever can completely change your financial life. It can lower your financial stress, it can give you breathing room, it can help you accelerate your road to wealth. For example, what if you bought a more modest car? What if you drove it for longer? What if that first car required a payment, but you chose something modest enough that you could pay it off in just 3 years? And what if after that you saved up and bought future vehicles outright so you never carried a monthly payment again? It's estimated that the typical driver will purchase 10 vehicles over the course of their lifetime. But what if you stretch that out just a little bit further? What if instead of buying 10 vehicles, you purchased 8? Not a dramatic difference, but enough to move the needle. Cars, just like your home, represent a directional choice, and getting these decisions right really go a long way to helping you build long-term wealth, much more so than being perfect on the small stuff. Number 3, health insurance and medical costs. This one isn't fun, it's not glamorous, it's often confusing, and it's massively expensive. For so many families, health insurance looks like this. Maybe $1,500 a month in premiums and say a $3,000 or $5,000 deductible, plus out-of-pocket costs on top of that. Unfortunately, we live in a society where healthcare isn't guaranteed, and after working for 20 years in the health insurance field, I truly mean it when I say, unfortunately, healthcare in America is incredibly expensive. One of the best things you can do is work for an employer who offers health coverage or have a spouse who does, because employer plans or group plans are exponentially more affordable than individual plans. Here's why. For single coverage, employers typically cover 80 to 85% of the premiums. For family coverage, employers usually cover about 70 to 75%. This means the employer pays the majority of the cost. Now, of course, you still pay something. You still have deductibles and co-pays and co-insurance, but having this subsidy from the employer makes a huge difference. You can't control everything about healthcare. None of us can, but you can make smart choices that meaningfully lower your expenses. Things like choosing the right plan for your situation, using an HSA when you can, staying in network, using preventative care, and avoiding unnecessary upgrades or out-of-network services. These choices will protect your finances more than cutting lattes ever could. And here's the deeper point. Investing in your health is the single best investment you can ever make. I would much rather you spend more money on healthy food and exercise today rather than more money on medications and doctor visits later in life. Now, that's not to say that everything is preventable. It's not, but I do like to think of it as stacking the deck in my favor. And working out doesn't have to be expensive. Walking's free, stretching's free, taking care of yourself emotionally and physically, that's free too. And as I get closer to 40 and have friends and family in their 70s and 80s struggling with mobility issues, I can tell you that it is far more important to me to work less hours in a day if it means I get to move my body more. Preserving and maintaining your health is far more important than any number in a bank account, any hours logged at work, or any promotion. Your health is number one, bar none. And I don't say this lightly. I say this because I've lived it. I had a brain tumor. I lost the entire use of the right side of my body, and it took months to regain it. When you lose your health, when you truly lose it, only then do you really realize how important it is to protect your health. So when I say protect your health, I mean it with every fiber of my being. Even today, after having the tumor removed, I have so much scar tissue that it left me with epilepsy. And every 4 to 5 weeks, I have a seizure. That seizure might last a few minutes or it might last a few hours. And every time it knocks me out. But every time it happens, it's my reminder that you have to do everything you can to protect your health. Health is everything. Protecting it is not optional. It is the foundation for your entire life, for your finances, and for your future. Number 4, childcare and kids' expenses. Childcare is essentially like a second mortgage, and for many families, this may extend for 3 to 5 years if you have multiple children, even longer, and it feels like you're paying for 2 households at once. And just as those expenses end, new expenses creep up. They may have school fees, extracurricular activities, sports, camps and technology, maybe braces, and it feels like it's a constant cycle of outgrowing everything. But I always like to add this because I feel like it's important. Kids can be as affordable or as expensive as you want them to be. Some families utilize free or low-cost resources like children's museums, libraries, parks, and hand-me-downs. Other families might choose a nanny, travel sports, private lessons, or high-cost experiences. And many of us land somewhere in the middle. There's no right or wrong way to do this. It just depends on your lifestyle, your values, and what you want your child to experience. And then there's the big one. College is the second biggest purchase many families ever make, right after a home. And here's the psychological trap. Many families take more time planning a family vacation than they do choosing a college financing strategy. Again, there's no judgment to be made in this situation. There's no universal right or wrong answer, but what you do need to do is make sure you understand the options and understand the true costs. These are deeply personal choices, but it is very important to recognize the reality that when you're 17, 18, or 19, you might not fully comprehend what it means to sign up for tens of thousands of dollars of student loan debt and how hard it can be to start your financial life in the negative. Starting your career while paying down $30,000, $50,000, or even $100,000 in student loans is a very different financial starting point than beginning with zero and being able to put money towards investing and building stability. And those early years are your most powerful compounding years. The good news is there's ways to make college more affordable. If you're choosing to get a degree, make sure you're going into a field where a degree is essential. You don't want to be just getting a degree for the sake of getting a degree. You want to make sure there's a return on investment. Perhaps you could do a local community college for the first few years and then transfer to a 4-year university. This can dramatically cut down costs by allowing you to live at home for the first 2 years. Perhaps you choose an in-state public school where tuition is set by the state and far more predictable. If you choose an out-of-state public school, it's worth considering becoming a resident of that state. Becoming an in-state resident can cut tuition by 50 to 75% in many states. And if you're exploring private universities, remember the sticker price is not set in stone. There's room for negotiation, and after scholarship and negotiations, most people only pay 50 to 55% of the advertised price. So take the initiative to see if you can get it at a discount. And of course, college isn't the only option. The trades are a wonderful choice, financially, practically, and for a long-term career. Here's the truth. Kids aren't a budget category. Kids are a financial era. And the decisions you make in this era will absolutely have an impact on your ability to build long-term wealth, and they're going to have more of an impact than your day-to-day budget line items. Now, this is the sleeper category that often flies under the radar. And it's not just about upgrading your home. It's lifestyle inflation, the steady habit of upgrading everything as your income grows. It might start with the little things, a nicer car, dining out more frequently, upgrading your clothes, doing it because everyone else is doing it. And then all of a sudden, you get 10 years into your career and your starter home feels a little bit too small, or maybe you want a nicer kitchen, or maybe you want to upgrade that car even more frequently. None of this makes you irresponsible, it makes you human, but every upgrade has a ripple effect. Upsizing a home by $150,000 isn't a $150,000 decision. By the time you pay the mortgage, interest, taxes, insurance, it can cost $300,000 to even $400,000 over 30 years. One choice, decades of impact, and cars follow a same pattern. If you're upgrading more frequently, if you're always carrying a payment, this eats into your ability to build long-term wealth. Now, the goal isn't to never upgrade your life. You worked hard for your money. I want you to enjoy it. But you want to upgrade intentionally. Upgrade your life today while also upgrading your savings and investments so your life is better in the future as well. And remember, this video isn't about criticizing lifestyle upgrades, because if you keep your 5 major expenses in check, you'll actually have more freedom to experience more upgrades in your life, so long as you do so intentionally. It's the unintentional upgrades that actually eat into your finances. Staying mindful in this area can absolutely accelerate your road to financial independence. Here's the truth we don't talk about enough. Cutting the lattes is great. Cutting subscriptions is great. Cooking at home, it's great too. But if your 5 core expenses are out of control, if your house is too expensive, if your cars are too expensive, if childcare is overwhelming, if healthcare is unmanaged, it doesn't really matter how many iced coffees you skip. Keep the expenses that cost tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in line, rather than spending moments of your day obsessing over a $10 choice. Those 5 categories we talked about, that's it. That's what should get all your attention. Everything else is a rounding error. So what do you actually do with all of this? Really, there are just 2 practical steps. Step number 1, audit your big 5. Ask yourself, is my home affordable or is it stretching me thin? Are my cars reasonable or are they quiet wealth killers? Is my health insurance optimized? Am I taking care of my health? Are my childcare or education plans realistic? Am I avoiding unnecessary upgrades and lifestyle creep? Fixing even one of these categories, if it's out of alignment, will give you more financial power than cutting 1,000 small purchases. Then, step 2, you can optimize the small stuff. Once the big levers are under control, if you want to, you can give some attention to the smaller things. Things like subscriptions, eating out, impulse purchases, grocery bills, or entertainment. But at that point, it's really all about upside and not about survival mode. You don't have to be perfect with your money. What you have to be is directionally right with your big 5 decisions. Those 5 decisions determine your financial future. Everything else, it's just a rounding error. Get the big things right, and everything in your financial life becomes easier. So what are your thoughts on the big 5? Are there any you would add to the list or take off the list? I'd love to hear it. I post new videos every single week. If you got anything at all out of this one, please give it a like. If you're new here, please consider subscribing, or if you know of someone who might get something out of this type of content, please consider sharing. I'll see you soon. Bye. Things so simple. Rude. Don't honk your horn when you're going through a suburb. The vast majority of, I don't know what to do. Truly, your spouse is. So we'll say it's your most important purchase. I assume we're not purchasing spouses here. So spouse is number 1.